What would you do if you found a stranger unconscious on the street and discovered they were worth billions? Picture this. You're 15 years old, walking through your neighborhood on a sweltering summer evening, when you see a girl collapse on the pavement. She's clearly in trouble. You could keep walking. After all, it's not your problem. Or you could stop to help a complete stranger, not knowing that single decision would lead to the most terrifying phone call of your life. Have you ever had to make a split-second decision that could change someone's life forever? Have you ever been the person who stopped when everyone else walked away? This is the story of Tiana Martinez, a factory worker's daughter who made a choice that would shake one of Dallas's most powerful families to their core. When she found 17-year-old Lillian Kensington unconscious on a quiet street, Tiana had no idea she was looking at a billionaire's daughter. All she saw was someone who needed help. What happened next would prove that the most valuable things in life, courage, compassion, and character, can't be bought with all the money in the world. If you've ever helped a stranger without knowing who they were, hit that like button right now, because this story will restore your faith in humanity. The Kensington name was synonymous with power in Dallas. Richard Kensington's business empire included luxury hotels, tech companies, and real estate developments that reshaped the city's skyline. Their mansion sat on 20 acres of perfectly manicured grounds, complete with tennis courts, a private lake, and security that rivaled the White House. But for 17-year-old Lillian Kensington, all that wealth felt more like a golden cage. Every move was monitored, every friend was background checked, and every public appearance was choreographed down to the minute. She attended the most elite private school in Texas, but she'd never ridden a city bus or walked into a grocery store alone. Just 15 miles away, in a neighborhood where houses touched each other and children played in streets instead of private gardens, lived Tiana Martinez. At 15, she already knew the value of every dollar. Her mother, Rosa, worked double shifts at a diner, while her father, Miguel, put in 12-hour days at a textile factory. Their small house was filled with love, laughter, and the kind of closeness that comes from supporting each other through real struggles. Tiana had never heard of the Kensingtons, despite living in the same city. Her world was homework at the kitchen table, helping her mother with grocery shopping, and babysitting neighbor kids to save money for college. She measured wealth in her family's ability to pay rent on time and maybe afford pizza on Friday nights. These two worlds seemed destined never to intersect. But fate has a way of bringing together the people who need each other most, often in the most unexpected circumstances. Comment if you think money makes teenage life easier or harder, because what happened next would challenge everything both girls thought they knew about privilege and purpose. The argument started over something small, Lillian's request to attend a friend's birthday party without a security detail. But it escalated quickly, touching on bigger issues of freedom, trust, and the suffocating nature of her protected life. "I'm 17 years old." Lillian had shouted at her father, "I should be able to go to a movie without 3 bodyguards following me." "You don't understand the dangers," Richard replied, his voice tight with familiar frustration. "People would do anything to get to our family." "What people? What dangers? I don't even have real friends because everyone thinks I'm some untouchable princess." The fight ended with slammed doors and Lillian storming to her room. But instead of staying there to sulk, she made a decision that would change everything. She waited until evening, slipped past her distracted driver during a shift change, and walked right out the front gates. For the first time in her life, Lillian Kensington was alone on city streets, wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt instead of designer clothes. No security detail. No chaperone. No one watching her every move. The freedom felt intoxicating at first. She walked through downtown Dallas, anonymous and unrecognized, finally experiencing what normal teenagers took for granted. But Texas summer heat is unforgiving, and the stress of the day, combined with dehydration and her own naivety about the physical demands of walking in 90-degree weather, began taking its toll. By the time she reached the quiet residential street where Tiana lived, Lillian's vision was blurring and her legs felt like rubber. Tiana was walking home from the corner store, carrying milk and bread for tomorrow's breakfast, when she saw the girl collapse. One moment, a stranger in jeans was walking unsteadily down the sidewalk. The next, she crumpled to the pavement like a marionette whose strings had been cut. Tiana's first instinct was to look around for help, but the street was empty, just her, the unconscious girl, and the growing shadows of evening. She could have run home to get her parents. She could have called 911 and waited from a safe distance. Instead, 15-year-old Tiana Martinez made a choice that would define her character forever. She ran to the collapsed stranger and knelt beside her. The girl was breathing but unresponsive, her skin pale and clammy despite the heat. Tiana had learned basic first aid in health class, so she knew enough to check for obvious injuries and try to wake her gently. "Hey, can you hear me?" Tiana said, her voice shaking slightly. "You're going to be okay." That's when she noticed the expensive phone that had fallen from the girl's pocket. The case was simple, but the phone itself was the newest model that cost more than Tiana's family spent on groceries in 2 months. Tiana hesitated. She could call 911, but that would mean ambulances, police, questions she couldn't answer. Instead, she picked up the phone and scrolled through the contacts, looking for someone who might know this stranger. There, at the top of the favorites list, Dad. Tiana's heart pounded as she pressed a number. What if this girl's father was dangerous? What if he thought Tiana had hurt her? What if? Who is this? The voice that answered was sharp, commanding, clearly not used to unknown numbers, calling his daughter's phone. For a moment, Tiana almost hung up, but then she looked at the unconscious girl whose head was now resting in her lap, and she found courage she didn't know she possessed. "Your daughter is unconscious on the street," Tiana said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I need you to come now." The silence on the other end lasted only a heartbeat, but it felt like an eternity. Then, "Where are you?" "Don't move. I'm coming." Have you ever been the person who stayed when everyone else walked away? Share your story below, because what happened next would show the true power of one teenager's compassion. Richard Kensington had built an empire by staying calm under pressure, but nothing in his business experience had prepared him for this phone call. His daughter was missing, unconscious, in the care of a complete stranger who had somehow gotten hold of her phone. He mobilized a security team and raced through Dallas streets like a man possessed, following the GPS coordinates Tiana had given him. 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours later, a convoy of black SUVs screeched to a halt on a quiet residential street. Richard jumped out before his vehicle had fully stopped, his heart hammering as he scanned the sidewalk. What he saw stopped him in his tracks. His daughter, his precious, headstrong, brilliant daughter, was lying unconscious with her head cradled in the lap of a teenage girl who couldn't have been much older than Lillian herself. The stranger was gently stroking Lillian's hair and speaking to her in soft, reassuring tones, even though Lillian couldn't hear her. Security personnel spread out around them, but Richard held up a hand to stop them from advancing. Something about the scene demanded reverence rather than intervention. The girl, Tiana, he reminded himself, looked up as he approached. Her clothes were simple, her sneakers worn, and there was no expensive jewelry or designer accessories that marked his family's social circle. But her eyes held a maturity and kindness that made Richard's throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "Are you her father?" Tiana asked quietly. "Yes." Richard knelt beside them, his hands shaking as he checked Lillian's pulse and breathing. "How long has she been unconscious?" "About 20 minutes. I think it's heat exhaustion. She was walking kind of wobbly before she collapsed." As if summoned by their voices, Lillian's eyes fluttered open. "Dad?" she whispered, confusion clouding her features. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe." Richard helped Lillian sit up slowly while paramedics, called by a security team, arrived to check her vitals. As the medical professionals took over, Richard finally had a moment to really look at the girl who had stayed by his daughter's side. "What's your name?" he asked. "Tiana Martinez, sir." "Tiana," Richard repeated, the name feeling significant somehow. "Why did you stay with her?" Tiana looked genuinely puzzled by the question. She needed help, she said simply, as if that explained everything. And in that moment, Richard realized it did. 2 weeks later, Lillian Kensington sat in the Martinez family small kitchen, learning to make Rosa's famous empanadas, while Tiana laughed at her clumsy attempts to fold the dough. "No, like this," Tiana demonstrated, her hands moving with practiced ease. You're overthinking it. I overthink everything, Lillian admitted, flour dusting her designer jeans. It comes with the territory of having your life planned out to the minute. The friendship that had started with a phone call had grown into something neither girl had expected. Richard, true to his word about never forgetting the lesson, had not only encouraged a relationship but facilitated it. He arranged for Lillian to spend time in Tiana's neighborhood, always with security nearby, but never intrusively present. For Lillian, Tiana's world offered something she'd never experienced. Genuine relationships based on who she was rather than what her family owned. Tiana's friends accepted her without knowing her last name, and Tiana's family welcomed her with the kind of warmth that money couldn't buy. For Tiana, Lillian's friendship opened doors she'd never imagined. Not just access to resources and opportunities, but exposure to a different way of thinking about the future. Lillian's assumption that college was a given, that dreams were achievable with the right support, began to reshape Tiana's own expectations for her life. You know what's funny? Lillian said one afternoon as they walked through Tiana's neighborhood, "I spent my whole life wanting to be normal, and you spent yours dreaming of something bigger. But we both just want to be seen for who we really are. And now we are," Tiana smiled, "by each other." Richard watched this friendship with wonder and gratitude. His daughter was learning lessons about character, compassion, and real friendship that no private school could teach. And the Martinez family had become extended family to the Kensingtons, bridging two worlds with the simple power of human kindness. Subscribe if you believe kindness is the most valuable currency, because what started with one phone call had become proof that the most important connections in life often come from the most unexpected places. That summer evening on a Dallas street corner, two teenagers learned something that would shape the rest of their lives. True character isn't measured by what you have, but by what you do when someone needs help. Tiana's decision to stay with a stranger, to make that terrifying phone call, to offer comfort without expecting anything in return, had created ripples that changed two families forever. What would you do if faced with Tiana's choice? Have you ever been the person who stopped to help when others walked by? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if you believe the best friendships come from the most unexpected places. Subscribe for more stories proving that kindness creates connections that last a lifetime. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most important call you'll ever make is the one you make for someone else.